seat and go right next to everything.
I kept thinking it would be portrait.
Yeah, I think we'll just, if we flip it, I think that'll make it easy.
All right. Call this meeting of the Elko County School Board of Trustees to order. Please join us in a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, agenda item 1.03, approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Teresa, seconded by Brian to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? Chair votes aye and the agenda is approved. Move on to item 1.04. Input from the public. This is a period devoted to comments by the general public, if any, and discussion of those comments. In the interest of privacy and due process, the public is requested to not raise personnel issues, except in a legally noticed closed personnel session of the board. No action may be taken upon a matter raised. This is a non-action item. This evening, we have Shannon Glascock. If you would have public comment, yes, come up to the front. Welcome.
Sorry, my printer wasn't working, so.
Wonder.
Excuse me for being a little nervous. I'm used to talking to a group of children, not a bunch of adults. So first, I want to thank you for this time to address the board, the superintendent, and community members. My name is Shannon Glascock, and I'm a resident at the Wine Cup Gamble Ranch, close to Montello, Nevada. I'm here this evening representing other parents, guardians, and community members of the Montello, Pilot Valley area. I have two topics to address this evening. One, the reopening of Montello School, and two, the district boundary lines. It quickly came to my attention when moving to the area, the need to reopen the Montello School. On the ranch alone, we have 12 school-aged children. Following a general survey of the area, we have 19, possibly now 24 students that would attend the K-8 Montello School. Currently, their educational needs are being met through online programs, homeschooling, and the West Wendover schools. If the school were to reopen, these students' educational needs could be met locally. I believe our children's academic success would be better served locally in a classroom with a teacher or teachers. The challenge of traveling 54 miles one way to West Wendover can be physically and emotionally tiring for our young students. In addition, they are also changing time zones. Therefore, our children have to rise very early to travel on the bus. The extensive travel and the time zone change can result in putting our students at an academic disadvantage. Those that are served online through the district's NVVA Ingenuity program are challenged by the lack of social interaction and physical activity. Although they don't have to travel and have a reasonable schedule, their emotional and physical state are concerning. These students spend many hours at a computer screen with no live interaction and little physical activity. I know the school district has just gone through a very challenging time trying to meet all the students' educational needs. Now that our schools have reopened and children are back in the classrooms, I'm petitioning the school board to reopen Montello School to meet the educational needs of these children and students. By opening the school back up, This setting would provide a more conducive learning environment than the ones our students are currently being served. The Montello Pilot Valley community would like to see the school reopen this fall for the 2021-22 school year. I know the district will have to look at the logistics and financial impact of reopening the Montello school. I'm asking that this process be expedited and added to the school board agenda for discussion and possible action May 25th, 2021. Water. Another area in which I would like to address are the current boundary lines in which the Wine Cup Gamble Ranch, Montello, and Pilot Valley lie. As stated before, these students are being bused to West Wendover. I would like administration and the board to consider sending a bus from Wells, as it had in the past, to better accommodate for schedules. Once again, West Wendover is not in the same time zone as our area. Wells is also a bit closer than West Wendover. Assuming the Montello school is reopened K-8, this change in direction would serve our high school students. I know parents and guardians can file a variance to have our children attend Wells High School. However, it would then require the individuals to provide their own transportation, and this can be very challenging financially. I know the argument could be made that many of us choose to live in a rural area. Because of this choice, we have to overcome the challenges that come with this. However, I would like to point out the economic, financial, and supply chain we contribute to those that live in populated areas. We have families that work for the railroad system that maintain the supply line that delivers many of your goods. We have families that work in our local mine that in turn provides a significant tax revenue to the county. We also have a very large cattle ranch, the largest in the state of Nevada, which supplies over 6 million pounds of beef per year. This beef is seen in your local stores and your lunch school programs. I point these things out to show the importance of our rural area and its impact on this county as a whole. Our rural community is asking that Elko County School District and administration review these requests. Realizing you have many other projects in the works, I ask that you take in consideration the needs of our children. What projects directly impact our students, and how can they be prioritized in a manner that will most effectively meet their academic success? Once again, we request the reopening of the Montello School K-8 and adding a bus route from Wells to Montello for the high school students. Thank you for your time and consideration. The community is willing to help in any way as the district goes through this evaluation process.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Glascock. I believe that your best approach will be to work through the superintendent and see what we can get arranged. So thank you very much for your presentation. All right, moving on to item 2.01, excuse me. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to 2.01, the superintendent's report. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I have a report for you, and then we have a presentation that was requested earlier by the board. So I'll just start, I'll go very quickly. We had a great season opening for spring sports this year. It was so great to see our high school students and Little League games that have been played around the community. It's been great to see them. And the weather has held up, at least on the weekends. You can stand outside the fence and watch the children play. So it's great every step we take to get closer to being normal. So it's been a great opening. We're very grateful for our athletic staff and the support staff who have worked so hard with many additional duties and tasks that have been needed due to COVID. We're still working to mitigate the impact of COVID, even though we are relaxing so many restrictions. And they do all that they do on behalf of the students. And so we just extend our gratitude to our staff. A reminder to the community that even though restrictions are loosening up, contact tracing is still done within a 6-foot radius. So we are getting closer together, but the contact tracing, if somebody tests positive, is still done at a 6-foot radius, which means that because of that reduction in the social distancing, this requirement has the potential to impact more students and more adults. And it is still a process that has to continue. It's still mandated to continue. Speaking of contact tracing, as you know, the elite nursing staff at Elko County School District, under the leadership of Bobby Shanks, performs all of our contact tracing efforts. And they do this for the the Elko County School District, which is big. We are a big county, and they do the contact tracing for all of the district. It is a complex and time-intensive process, and we are very appreciative of the work they do, and that work continues, even though, as I said, we're loosening up on some of the restrictions. One of the nurses on the team that we have, Skylar Basanias, also volunteers her time with the Great Basin College contact tracing team. They do contact tracing for the entire county. We do it for the school district, they do it for the county, and that has been an extensive process. Skylar volunteers and works with the GBC contact tracing team. And last week, the county commission recognized the GBC tracing team and Skylar. She was recognized for her hard work and dedication as a member of that team. So we also recognize and are grateful to all of our school nurses for their work. So congratulations to Skylar. Speaking of appreciation, next week we celebrate a couple of groups in our district community. The first week of May marks, and that's next week, Food Service Providers and Teacher Appreciation Week. These are two of the different groups. May 1st is National Principals Day. They are recognized over the weekend, but still recognized nonetheless. We appreciate the hard work that everyone has put into this year and every year, but certainly this year has been exceptional. And we enjoy the opportunity to recognize all of the important groups that are in our district. And last, I'd like to introduce again to you our new Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Julie Holman. Although Julie just joined us this week, there's Julie in the back, she's joined, I'm calling that the cool kids table back there. So although Julie has just joined us this week, she is no stranger to Elko County School District. Julie has conducted our audits for the past 10 years. We have a private audit that's done. And Julie has been the audit manager on that. And so we're grateful to have her now on our team. And we're happy that you're here. And that's what I have for you.
All right. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
You guys had asked for an update on recruiting and an effort to stick with crystal balls and moving targets from earlier this evening. We'll continue in that regard. I think it's really necessary, given the fact we have some new board members, to sort of bring you up to date on the employment landscape and what's going on. It certainly affects us as it does other districts. So everybody has heard that there's a teacher shortage. We've known that for a while. why is there one? Well, there's a hyperlink in there on that first line that you guys can go to. There's a lot of complex dynamics involved in why we're at where we're at. And I'll leave you to look at that if you desire to do that. But one of the big reasons just has to do with simple supply and demand. Supply is dwindling. The demand for teachers is increasing, and they're sort of at odds with each other. The next point is that all the studies that I've looked at predict that, and this has to do with birthing rates, but it's expected that there's going to be lots and lots of new kids in the next decade in the nation's schools. As a result, and you guys even have seen some of this in our district, we end up with people in our classrooms that potentially lack the best, the most optimum training. We're not there yet, but there are districts in the nation that are hiring warm bodies. It's gotten to that degree. So they're putting people in classrooms that have relevant content experience, but they lack a lot of the pedagogy coursework necessary to know how to deliver that content. So how big is this shortage? Of course, that's disaggregated state by state, but the overall, the overall scenario is that there's a significant, severe lack nationwide. And we also know that maybe not like at GBC, I'm not sure if Brian could maybe talk to that in terms of what their enrollment in teacher programs at GBC has looked like over the last, say, 6 years. But nationwide, there's a decline in students entering educational programs at colleges and universities. So that's all to say that this shortage is not going to clear up soon, and it's expected to continue for some time. You probably have to look at my handout to see this, but that shows you a table that goes from 2004 to 2025. And beginning in about 2013, where you look at projected demand and estimated supply, you see that starting in 2013, there is not enough supply to meet demand. And then I put a little thing over to the right. In 2014 and 15, we negotiated some changes in the district salary schedule where we pretty drastically increased the base pay rate for teachers. And that was in response to this notion that there was a shortage of teachers, and we wanted to be more competitive, at least in our state, at attracting teachers. And so at that time, we felt we needed to at least get the base pay above $40,000 a year. And some of you on the board will recall this. I think you were there. And we were able to do that. The problem is everybody has the same ideas, and it wasn't maybe a year or two before every other district in the state had sort of done the same thing. But this data is pretty concerning because as you follow it down, we're in 2021 now, and you can see that the projected supply of teachers is 190,000. But the demand is 302,000. So that doesn't paint a good picture regarding the availability of teachers. And of course, when you look at places that were historically hard to recruit, like in our district, Wendover and Owyhee. This problem is exacerbated, and because it was already very, very difficult to get people in those places. And we've had pretty significant signing bonuses at both of those locations for a long time, with some effect, but there's still significant issues. So what states have the most significant shortages? Every state does, but there's a list of 7 that have the highest, and there we sit.
How does our starting salary compare with those other 6 on that list?
You know, that I'm not sure how we compare. California tends to, their salaries, I just know, are fairly high, but so are all the associated costs of living in California.
How does our retaining rate compare to these states?
That I don't know that either, Luke. What our retention rates are as compared to those states. Shortage areas, this comes from the Department of Ed. You know, CTE, elementary ed. I've been around long enough to where the mere idea that there would be a shortage of elementary ed teachers is just almost unheard of, but it in fact is there, and we have a problem in our own district in that regard. ESL, math, science, social studies, special ed, foreign languages. Mr. Wickersham has, I think, 3 different foreign language teachers that have retired this year: German, French, and 2 Spanish, and those will be difficult to fill. Then, you know, there's other factors that are contributing to this problem. Dwindling pool of applicants. You have an aging workforce nationwide. Lots of teachers approaching retirement age, and those all, you know, complicate the problem. Certainly, low teacher pay is a problem. And then there's problems on the other side of the issue that deal with, you know, absenteeism with students, and problems that our principals see all the time. Lack of parental involvement and support, all kinds of things like that. It's an interesting, that second bullet, when asked on a year-to-year basis, when they survey people, turns out that about 8% of polled teachers say they may leave the profession within the next year. And the most recent one says 33% of the people polled are looking to leave the profession. Some of that undoubtedly is attached to the COVID situation. You all know that we've had some turnover that I don't think would have occurred had COVID not been in the equation. We have run the experiment with hiring people on foreign visas. We actually hired a science teacher over in Wendover from the Philippines. But because of COVID, the whole visa process, getting into the States, getting cleared, it is a ton of work, and it's been made more difficult because of issues surrounding COVID. I think Cassie can attest to the difficulty we had with that one individual. When the person finally did get to the States, basically had nothing, and it took 2 months to get squared away to end up with a license to actually be in a classroom and draw a paycheck. So it's it wouldn't be the first choice, but depending on how bad things get, it may be something that we have to continue to explore. And then you have all the issues attached to this stuff you guys are hearing about with state budgets. That's another factor that impacts all of this. So, you know, some of the things that we've tried to do, we've tried to use to the fullest extent we can, the ARL program. Ryan knows a lot about that. His offices over there have been instrumental in assisting the district with sort of maximizing our ability to use ARL as a method to get people into the classroom. For those of you that don't know how that works, you can engage in an ARL program if you already have a bachelor's degree, and those people have 3 years to take coursework to obtain a regular teacher license. We've also been really successful. Pat and Craig and Brenda over in Wendover have been especially good at this, where they have retained long-term subs in their classrooms over there, but they're local people. And for years and years and years, we would hire 20 people in Wendover, recruit them to Wendover, and the next year, 20 plus another 5 would leave. And so these guys have, it's a really good strategy, and it's drastically reduced the turnover over at Wendover with teachers. They find people that want to live there and be part of the community and stay there. And that's what you want. You want stability for the community and for the kids. So job advertising, we use a web-based system called Talent Ed, otherwise known as School Recruiter. Everything is done through a applicant portal, from application to references to background checks. All of it is done on that web-based Talent Ed site. So, you know, it includes job descriptions, et cetera, et cetera. COVID has also significantly impacted our ability to recruit. Last year, as you guys know, the ones that were on the board, last spring, there were no recruiting fairs last year. Not only no physical, but no virtual. They just didn't exist. This year, there are no face-to-face recruiting fairs either, but there are virtual fairs, and I've listed some of those for you that we have engaged in. The problem is a little bit more about virtual fairs. There can be group sessions. We invite all of our administrators to participate in these virtual fairs. They can talk to candidates through that platform. The vacancy lists that we have been provided to all those career fair agencies. The problem has been that I guess the best way to explain it is students don't like the interface. So there are not a lot of candidates engaged in these virtual fairs. There's some, but not like what you would see in a face-to-face recruiting fair where you have physical bodies in a big arena that are going from district to district, table to table, and visiting with people. So, you know, it's a mixed bag, but we're trying to do everything that we can to do what we can to attract people. Handshake is a program that It's the #1 site for college students to find jobs. Some of you may know of it. It's another interface. All of our jobs go through Handshake, and they're available to kids at colleges to see. That's the list of schools or 70 campuses that our vacancies go to, who all participate in this consortium through Handshake. Another thing that we added this year with the Recovery Act monies, which is allowable, we've established a $5,000 signing bonus for regular positions in locations other than Hawaii and Wendover, and a $7,000 signing bonus for special ed outside of Hawaii and Wendover. And then regular positions in Hawaii and Wendover are $15,000 for signing bonus and $17,000 for special ed. Going back a number of years, if we have been unable to fill at the secondary level certain areas at certain campuses, we use Annuity to fill that gap. And kids essentially take that coursework through a virtual platform. So a little bit about, we talked about hiring bubbles, and there's some information for you. And it just comes off a seniority list, but you can see how many, for example, 20-year secondary employees there are out there, how many 20-year elementary employees are out there. Anyway, it adds up to 140 positions over 10 years just through that attritional spin up in terms of longevity. Anyway, there's some obstacles that we've discussed already. The nationwide teacher shortage, us being one of the 7 most impacted states, it does not help that Nevada, with respect to funding, is 44th in spending in the nation and 42nd in funding. I mentioned the low participation in virtual fairs. We have to compete with other districts, which I'm hopeful that our salary structure and our signing bonuses make us competitive, hopefully more than competitive. And then, you're still dealing with COVID, and, do people want to go into schools and engage in that kind of a profession? So it's an obstacle. And then I already mentioned work visas. So current licensed vacancy status, we have 66 positions posted. As of this morning, we have hired, these are new hires, 29 new certified staff. We have 11 offers currently out. I don't know if they'll accept or not. And we facilitated 45 transfers within the district so far to date. Just so you guys know, we are months ahead of where we would normally be. That's how much we've pressed the urgency of getting people hired. There's a note there that we typically don't even start in-district transfers until May. If you look at the CBA, April 15th is sort of when you get the ball rolling with transfers. Well, we're almost done with that part of the process. There's a lot of unknowns still. We continue to receive resignation notices and retirement notices on a weekly basis. I'm not going to say it's daily. And staff have, the ability that they'll have letters of intent go out May 15th. They're due back May 25th. We have lots of people that sign letters of intent to come back who ultimately don't come back. They have until 10 days after the last student day, which is June 4th, to retire or resign without a fiscal penalty. So there will be things that continue to occur through the next month and into the first couple of weeks of June before we for sure know about where we're at with regard to vacancies. So,
well, first of all, thank you for the presentation, and for obviously the hard work and the obstacles you guys are dealing with right now in Central. One question comes to mind. Well, several actually. We'll start with the first one. What are we doing as a district? Because I'm a little old school in the sense that I don't think every position is just motivated by money. I think it's part, obviously, it's an initiation basis, but what are we doing to retain the staff? What are we doing to make them, why would you want to come to Elko School District, the county, and stay here your whole career? What's the advantage compared to Washoe? Why are we losing people to others? Does that make sense? Are we offering a personal growth program? Is there like incentive in that sense, apart from monies? I'm not talking about money at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Luke, up until COVID hit, we had I think one of the best new teacher induction programs that you're going to find in the state. Okay. That's been compromised as a result of the situation, and I also think that our site principals and in our PDP do a fantastic job of planning and delivering professional development. We also have retention bonuses in Hawaii and Wendover so they get a signing bonus when they come the first year, and then if they come back a second year, they get a retention bonus. And I've talked to Dr. Robinson a little bit about the money the federal money we're receiving, and part of that money can be used for retention kinds of things, but it's a little too early to figure out what that might look like.
Could we, and I don't know if this is part of the union or not, could we add, for example, a 5-year bonus, a 10-year bonus? When you hit those benchmarks, you actually get another bonus if you're within the district. Is that something that's feasible?
Yeah, I think anything like that is certainly possible to negotiate. There's lots of different things that are out there. There are ways to, I think, have all kinds of discussions about things in the current contract that could be restructured to make it more palatable to stay here rather than go there. And, I can talk to you guys about some of those ideas when we get to closed session stuff with regard to the next contract that we have to negotiate.
My last question.
Look, I just want to interrupt for just a second in response to that. You made the contract. It's not always, or the point that it's not always the extrinsic motivators that keep people in any profession, in any job. And research shows that teachers, and we're talking about just particularly teachers, that the most vulnerable time for any teacher to stay in their profession is 3 to 5 years. And so that's why the induction program that Mr. Smith just mentioned to you is so critically important, and it has to be quality and it has to be long lasting. There has to be a mentoring piece that goes with it. And we were greatly impacted with COVID this year. So that's something we're putting a lot of attention to, is making sure that with all these new people that we're welcoming at the beginning of the year, that we are going to give them the supports that they need to be successful so they stay. And again, research shows that that does contribute to longevity. We are also we had a lot of teachers that started this year and they missed out on that induction program and the mentoring that follows. And so we are going to bring them in so that they also get their first year of mentoring as if this is their first year, so that we can, so that's a lot of teachers that we're going to be addressing with that important piece. The other part of it, and again, I'm talking about those things that we can do that are not monetary that you mentioned. You know, the other things that research shows that really important to teachers is a very robust professional development climate and culture that you have in a school district. And you build something like that by first building the vision and setting the goals for the district. So, and that's something we have to do. And we have to set goals for not only rebuilding after the year of COVID, but also just a strategic plan and a vision for the district as a whole in normal times. We am working with the RPDP right now. We're working to find a facilitator to be able to, our intent is to open the school year with a county-wide strategic plan event so that we are talking to different communities within the county, and then we can develop that strategic plan. And in that plan, that's where you set your goals for professional development and those other items that you put in place so that you are ultimately impacting longevity. So we've got those projects that we're working on. And then one last project we're working on is we know that the ARP money that's coming, the three main focuses are academic recovery, social facilities for reopening, and then social, emotional, and mental well-being for students and staff. And so we're starting this year. We have a task force together of community partners, school district partners, and we're working on developing an employee wellness program that will provide some of these, some of the care that we want to have for the foundation of our school district, which are our adults, so that they are better able to be able to provide for our students. So you're absolutely right that the monetary is important, and we don't want to put that aside because it is very important, but so are so many other things. And in particular, as we're addressing next year, we really need to be mindful of those things that we put in place to support our staff and our teachers so that we can have retention across the board, not just with our teachers, but you know, we have incredible staff here. And we want to make sure that there are things in place for them as well. So you've hit on something that is absolutely important, and we're putting a lot of focus on that for the upcoming.
Good to hear.
Other comments? Well,
I just have one last one. Have we thought about reaching out to the teachers who at the very onset of COVID resigned because they were scared or frustrated with the district or the pandemic? Have we, because now that things are a little different, they might be hurt and they don't necessarily want to approach us, but have we thought about approaching them and saying, hey, you know what, this is where we're at, let's start again?
We haven't reached out to people that have voluntarily left, and maybe we should.
Maybe some of them was just, and I don't know, maybe some teachers could help out on this one. Maybe they were just frustrated and they loved teaching, just not in those specific conditions, I guess I would say.
Yeah, it's something we can definitely look into.
Yeah.
Candace?
Yeah. I wanted to say thanks together and giving us all this. My question is on the signing bonuses. I'm guessing our district doesn't have enough money to just increase the wages, for what do they, I think they call Ruby Valley hazard pay for some reason. But, increase the wages in these areas where we're having so much trouble recruiting, because what concerns me with the signing bonuses is, they might work for a year or two in that school, and then once the signing bonus dries up, they go elsewhere.
We have isolation pay in the master contract, and unfortunately, people have different objectives when they're negotiating contracts with the district, but currently isolation pay is $150 a month. In those places, and it's not a lot, but it's something, and it's something we could look at trying to increase in the future. It's been at that level for a long time.
I just wondered if that would help with retention. Because I can see that being an issue. The signing bonus is really attractive. You go to work there, you get your signing bonus, and then you move on.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yes. So I just had a question. I believe when we had that buyout meeting, the comment was made that we were waiting till that meeting to start recruiting, or, you know, was that correct?
Not necessarily waiting for that meeting, but that meeting would certainly have has an impact on our recruiting efforts. But I think we'd already posted positions.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
You know,
I just didn't know if because I remember there was something about that, but, you know, were we heavily recruiting at GBC before that, or were we talking to these students before they start looking elsewhere, you know, to go teach elsewhere?
Yeah.
For that meeting.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's something that's ongoing. And that's what's really great about the partnership that we have with GBC, is that that's something, you know, it's ongoing. When they are having to do their student teaching and the things that they have to do, we feed them right into our district. So we sort of have attract them first here. But that's ongoing. And all of these recruitment efforts were in place before the buyout meeting. The only thing that the buyout does is inform us for sure on the number that we might need.
Sure. And this may be for Brian. I mean, what are the students' thoughts? Or are they, well, you know, I'm sure you hear rumbling in the classroom of, are they looking elsewhere? What would attract them to stay here? What could we do better as a district to keep them here?
Some do, and granted, a lot of them do feel that they're going to be placed where they're student teaching, but there's not necessarily any guarantees. And I think going forward, that would be a good aspect to look at, is some sort of guarantee if they're going to commit to a particular school.
And then the 66, that was before all the retirements for this year, correct? The 66 openings.
So that is the current number of vacancies. So you would need to add the number of hires to that, and that would give you the total vacancies that have been out there. Because that number will change in any given week. There'll be a 10 swing.
We were receiving resignations and retirements even prior to the buyout process. So that's why this process really starts very early and is, as I said, almost ongoing, depending on what the need is. And particularly this year when we had people leaving out of concern for COVID, you know, there were some instances where we could cover, and there were some instances where we had to find replacements. So it's a strange year in that regard, but it's something that we have to continually do even in normal years.
You know, as unfortunate as it is, we don't want to get our administrators in a panic about just hiring personnel, because you guys have heard me say before that, you know, one thing I tell them all the time is sometimes nobody's better than somebody. And when you just start hiring people to fill spots, to cross them off, you can get yourself in a spot you don't want to be in, because that one employee can take up 90% of your time the next year if they're not a good fit and if they're not a good hire.
This vacancy is just for license. It's not like counselors and support staff.
I'm sorry.
66 vacant positions. It's just teachers at this point. It's not support staff or counselors or.
It's any licensed position. So that would include,
yes,
whether it's a speech pathologist or a school psych or a counselor or a third grade teacher or a administrator or whatever.
Have we seen more traction with these bonuses?
You know, it's just something that's hard to put your finger on, because if you look at our portal, that gets populated every day. There are 20 more apps. When I come to work, there's 20 more people in the system that weren't there the day before. As to whether that signing bonus that's advertised in there motivated the submission of the app, I don't know. I hope it has an effect. I would like to think that a $17,000 signing bonus to a 23-year-old would be motivational, but I don't know.
If it helps, Mike, we do have a lot of students in our programs that aren't there quite yet, and they're chomping at the bit to be able to have jobs in the district. So that it is encouraging, because the sign-on bonuses are probably one of the aspects that they're really excited about.
Good.
And I know the regular areas are a little bit less, you know, obviously a lot less in the Owyhee and Wendover. Do we need to raise it for the Elko, the Carlin?
See, the dynamic that we always wrestle with is, if you know, you're trying to motivate people more
right.
to go to Owyhee and Wendover, but you still want to motivate people here. But if you make them close to equivalent, they're just going to say, I'm going to Southside. I'm not going to Wendover Elementary. And so, you know, it's a good question. It's
are just the majority of the vacancies though in these bigger areas. So do we need to look at increasing that to attract more people here where the more vacancies are?
You know, we certainly can look at adjusting the level of that. What established those benchmarks of 5,000 and 7,000 was the number of vacancies times X number and how much funding is available. So it's not unlimited, and there's other pieces of that funding that need to be used for other things. So that's sort of what created that 5 and 7. It created a number that our grant writer said, yes, we can fund it within the amount of money that we're projected to have.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions? If not, Mr. Smith, thank you for this rundown. I think the board appreciates the information that we've received. So, and Dr. Robinson, is there any questions for Dr. Robinson with her superintendent's report? Hearing none, we're going to move on to action item 3.01, receipt, review, and possible approval of the new calendar for Battleborn Youth Academy, Challenge Academy for the school year 21-22 for possible action.
I move to approve the new calendar for the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy for school year 21-22.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Candace and seconded by Luke to accept the calendar for the school year 21-22 for the Battleborn Youth Challenge Academy. Is there any discussion?
I just had a quick question. How many days are those individuals working at Battleborn? What contract are they on? Because I noticed they go a little bit longer. They start earlier and go longer.
I think that the teaching staff are like on 189s. What that is, like a new teacher's a 185. So it's 4 additional days past that. They have sort of a crazy calendar, as you can see. And, they're
a unique calendar.
Their semesters don't mesh with everywhere else in the district. So I hope that answers your question.
So it's just a few more days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion?
I just had a question since I've been out to the academy and got to tour it. What do your students do on the vacation days? Do they stay there? Do they travel? How does that work?
Yes, ma'am. So we have an 8-core component curriculum. So on those days, we focus more on the job skills or the health and hygiene or the leadership followership. Additionally, we seek out service to the community options for us to be able to get off campus when they're not engaged in academics.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the calendar signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the calendar is adopted. Moving on to item 3.02, request permission to submit an application to the Nevada Department of Education to operate an alternative school for possible action. Is there, Dr. Robinson, is
this, by the way, it's not an alternative school. It's just an alternative school calendar,
yeah.
right?
Correct.
is it
It's
alternate?
An alternate is for the 4-day, the communities on the 4-day school week.
Okay,
We have to submit this every year.
okay. So it does have the calendar, the wording right there. I apologize. So, Dr. Robinson, you don't need to respond to this one.
I move to approve the alternative schedule.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Ira, seconded by Teresa to accept the alternate schedule. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the schedule is adopted. Moving on, 3.03. Receipt, review, and possible acceptance of a bid for West Wendover High School welding lab ventilation upgrade submitted by U.S. Mechanical and conditional award of contract to that bidder for possible action.
I just have a question about such a difference between the bidders. I know we're looking at almost $80,000.
Oh, you're comparing
Yeah,
the price for the Wendover compared to the Elko High School.
No, the number one bidder, which is $265,000, and then the number four bidder, which is $345,000, almost $346,000. That's a huge change. I'm just curious.
Is there any explanation for that, Casey?
I have no idea how they bid their project. So they give us a closed bid. That's the numbers. That's what they estimated it would cost.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make the motion. Oh, go ahead.
Or accept the best bid for the West Wendover High School welding lab ventilation upgrade submitted by U.S. Mechanical. And conditionally award the contract to that bidder, subject to timely submission to the district legal counsel of all documents required by instructions to bidders, including 1, signed contract, 2, proof of required insurance, 3, issued performance bond, 4, issued payment bond, and 5, completed project apprenticeship report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Iris, seconded by Brian to accept the bid as stated. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the bid is accepted. All right, moving on to item 3.04, receipt, review, and possible acceptance of the bid for Elko High School welding lab ventilation upgrades submitted by U.S. Mechanical and conditional award of contract to that bidder for possible action.
Can I make one comment on that?
Yes, Casey.
One error on bidder number 4. The base bid was $498, $287. The $438 was carried over from the bidder number 3. Error.
Okay.
I move that the board accept the best bid for the Elko High School welding lab ventilation upgrade submitted by US Mechanical and conditionally award the contract to that bidder, subject to the timely submission to the district legal counsel of all documents required by the instructions to bidders, including 1, the signed contract, 2, proof of required insurance, 3, issued performance bond, 4, issued payment bond, and 5, completed project apprenticeship report.
Okay.
A second.
All right, it's been moved by Candace, seconded by Luke to accept the bid for the Elko High ventilation system. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the bid signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the bid is accepted. Okay, moving on to item 3.05, receipt, review, and possible acceptance of the bid for Elko High School Junior and Senior Building Remodel submitted by MGM Construction and conditional award of contract to that bidder for possible action.
I move that the board accept the best bid for the Elko High School Junior and Senior Building Remodel submitted by MGM Construction and conditionally award the contract to that bidder, subject to the effect of any timely submission of a protest and to the timely submission to the district legal counsel of all documents required by the instructions to bidders, including 1, the signed contract, 2, proof of required insurance, 3, issued performance bond, 4, issued payment bond, and 5, completed project apprenticeship report.
My second.
Okay, it's been moved by Brian, seconded by Luke to accept the bid submitted by MGM. Is there any discussion?
And this is just a stripping of those current classrooms down to basics again, right?
Actually, in the junior building, we're going to convert that into an admin area. That's where the principals and vice
That's
principals
right.
are
Okay. Yep.
And they're moving all the administration's office back to there. Probably getting what, 8 or 10 new classrooms?
Correct.
8? Yeah.
But the labs won't exist in those 2 buildings anymore.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Good.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the motion is accepted. Moving on to item 4.01 is the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved by Ira, seconded by Brian to accept the consent agenda, to adopt a consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the consent agenda is approved. Item 5.01, report from our NASB director for possible action. Mr. Wines.
All I have to report is the meeting hosted here in Elko is moved to the 26th of June. The 25th is an executive committee meeting that's here in Elko, and then the 26th meeting out at 71.
Okay.
If you want to go get a hold of Deb and maybe limit it to 50 people.
Okay, so there may be a limitation on the number of folks that can go there. So
it fills up, and anybody here wants to go, I think I can get you. I think I can get you in.
You got a key to the back gates, what you're saying. Huh? Okay. And I think that Cassie will take care of getting registration. So if any of the board is interested in doing that and your calendar is free for that period of time, it'd be great having as many of you as possible there. All right. Anything else? Okay. Items from board members.
I just had a couple, Jim.
Okay.
One thing, I was appreciative of Shannon for coming in and speaking about Montello, because I know some of the logistics that happened. I know when Teresa was there too, with Wendover being bussed over and the nightmare that it created with students sometimes. So I fully support moving forward with that. Then the other one, I was reading an Edweek article on the pandemic learning, and they did an analysis of math and reading scores from Renaissance. And it was about 3.8 million students, so the sample size was good. And they were showing a rise in scores during the 2021 academic year in the winter at that time. And I was wondering if we had a similar instrument here. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding that allow us to be able to, because I hear anecdotally from even my student teachers and some of the teachers about the efficiencies actually now that the schedule is creating, and to see the growth in their students. So do we have a name of that program?
We utilize the MAP assessment for that as a progress monitor. And
through Renaissance?
Well, no, Renaissance is a different program. It's a Renaissance is a reading and math, the STAR math, the STAR reader, that's all part of the Renaissance program. That's more of an elementary program. Oh, the mic, sorry. Hope you guys heard me. I have a louder voice than most.
I think Keith can talk about Renaissance a little bit. Again, it's more of an elementary thing, but yeah. And we don't use the Renaissance products district-wide, Brian. So we can take a look at those. We have several schools that use them, but it's sporadic. We do utilize the MAP assessments. This year, well, in past years, we've utilized the MAP assessment even through high school grades. MAP is required by the Read by 3 legislation from a few years back for grades K through 2. And this year, we required schools to go ahead and administer the MAP assessment for the required grade levels. But above and beyond that, we told them that was, if you wish to do that for school data, we're okay with that. But things were so just weird between all three administrations. The first administration, we were distanced. The second, we were hybrid, and the third one's coming up in May. So,
and will that data be used then to drive decisions then this summer and the upcoming year?
Yeah, our summer programs that we're running, like the elementary program, for example, have directed principals to utilize MAP results and teacher recommendations to identify students who they will recommend attend our summer programs. And I did take a comparison of the mid-year MAP assessment for just those grades we required in this year, K through 2, to the mid-year administration of the MAP assessment from last year. And it's difficult because it's different groups of kids. You're comparing this year's second graders to last year's second graders. And we saw several declines, but I did see one or two areas. It's been a while since I looked at it. Kindergarten math scores on that mid-year assessment were actually higher this year than this year's kindergartners were higher than last year's kindergartners. That's one of the areas I remember.
Yeah, it's very preliminary, but what we've noticed is that the declines, even the declines that we've had, have not been out of range from a normal year. So it was kind of hopeful.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing I noticed, that, I utilized MAP scores even all the way at the high school level as one piece of data for our school performance plan. And when you're comparing data from different groups of kids, so, the graduating class from last year compared to the graduating class from this year, or this year's ninth graders compared to last year's ninth graders, different cohorts of kids, that performance will vary. And those differences that I noticed this year in a lot of areas weren't any more points higher or lower than will happen in just a normal year. So it's very difficult to say that where we saw declines were because of distance learning.
And that's what we're starting to hear regional wide too in the West from a lot of the other superintendents in the other states and some of the district superintendents as well. So that's good.
Yeah, that's what they're reporting. That's good news.
Thank you.
Okay. This last weekend on Friday evening and Saturday, I attended the School Boards Association open meeting law presentation that was on Friday evening. It was put on by the legal counsel for Washoe County School District. And going through the open meeting law, there were a few new items that I've sat through the open meeting law presentations. There, you always can take something away from those meetings. So I found that rather interesting. And on Saturday, it was for board governance, and Deb Dudley out of California presented for that particular from 8 until 4. And it was enlightening, and it keeps you thinking about what the ramifications are if you do something, how that impacts the rest of the entire operation. So I know that I enjoy these classes, and I'd encourage everybody, you know, those people that are in their first and third year, it's a good way to interact with the other board members from around the state. And you also get your credits in, so you're not scrambling at the very end. So I appreciate the opportunity to get there. So
did you say, Jim, those are virtual currently, or that was live?
This was a live meeting.
Okay, nice.
And everybody was glad to have a live meeting.
Yes.
So very good.
All right, Jim, I just want to say I go along with Brian in supporting, you know, really looking seriously at reopening the Montello School and whatever logistics we need to, you know, look at what the building looks like. You know, our rural schools are really a bonus for our district. And I think that's a pretty large number of students for that area. And we should look at that pretty seriously. And then just say it's been great to see students out and about participating in athletics, and glad to see a lot more activity going on with that.
Any other board comments? All right. We'll move on to item 6.01, approval of the accounts payable.
Move to approve. Second.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I will be abstaining because I am listed in the accounts payable for a mileage reimbursement.
Okay, duly noted.
And I will disclose that I have a family member whose employer is listed on the accounts payable, so I will also be abstaining.
All right. Any other declarations? See, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the accounts payable, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, and the accounts payable are approved. Item 7.01, comments from the public, if any, non-action item. This is the final opportunity for public comments. Any public comments? I'll switch this up. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye. We're adjourned.